All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our little Saturday discussion. And I can see Casey with his video on. Thank you for joining us. I most definitely miss talking to you for the week. So it's nice that we have this platform so that we can interact and meet. And thank you so much for joining us as everyone else in the Zoom. Thank you for being here. And well, again, welcome to our Saturday discussion. And this is an opportunity for us, for myself as well, to discuss the lessons that we got to learn from happiness studies. So we are following the certificate study program. Um, and in the MA program, we got to take this amazing lecture as well, but we didn't have the opportunity to discuss the topic in depth. So this is an opportunity for us to have a discussion and share our understanding and the idea that we got from the lecture. And even though I am following the structure of Tao's four-part lecture, we are not limited to just the lecture material. As you know, we have reading, we have online lectures and external content and books that we can share in this discussion. And feel free to share your thought as well, right? Because this is simply an open discussion. It is not a lecture, so don't be shy, just share. And you never know, as we discuss this, we might get to learn a things or two. And one thing that I really like about having this meeting is that we get to exercise the three R's of James, and those are reminder, repetition, and ritual. So I am working to build an environment where we can exercise that, so we can cultivate and implement these teaching into our life. And I think it is very important that we remind ourselves of this material, repeating, have the repetition, and make it into a ritual that we reminding each other each week on these important issues. So let's get started. And this week we are moving on to week 11. And this is the second part of the second physical principle. So it is about physical well-being. And the second physical principle states that a healthy life requires adherence to our given nature. So what does this mean exactly? Last week we kind of went into detail of what it means by understanding nature, accepting reality, so that we can open up to new possibility, right? In order to build air plant, we have to accept the gravity all around us. And when we accept reality, we are opening doors to many, many new possibility. On week 11, we are going to explore different topic that directly influence our health. And I believe there are, beside nutrition and exercise, there are a couple of elements like a good night's sleep and touch that we are going to touch on week 11. But on 11.1, we get to discuss the topic of stress. And Tao started his lecture by introducing the story of the war on fat. And this is very, very interesting because I have learned this a while back. And it talks about the the war on fast, which started in the 1960s, and how fasts were misunderstood, it was misguided, and there was many heart diseases that got blamed on fat, and not all of the fasts are bad, as we learned later. It's just those that from fried food that have negative influence on our health. There are good fats like the one come from olive oil or avocado. Nuts are very, very good for our health. Fish, salmon, very, very good omega-3 source. And fats can actually help with brain health, and it will reduce the risk of stroke, heart disease, cancer, cognitive function, and maintain a healthy weight. And it was the sugar industry that public, or at least help publics, many misinformation in the 1960s, which we will learn later. So the importance of knowing this is that we can do a better job with our nutrition, and not only that, from the story of the war on fats, we we learn about stress and how it is very similar to fat, which is much misunderstood. And similarly, stress is not always bad. It's not always the enemy. In fact, stress can be very, very good for us. For example, when we go to the gym and we lift all of that weight, it stress out our muscle. It even tears some part of the muscle, but because of that, the muscle can rest, it can grow from those stress. So in a way, for me personally, I believe that stress is very, very good for us. It is a signal for us to grow, and I believe that we exist so that we can have many, many opportunity to learn. There are many, many lessons to learn, and when we experience stress, it's simply a signal that we are having an opportunity to learn. But most people, at least during the research by Kelly McGonigal, um, there was a research on stress and how she pointed out the upside of stress. And it is a very interesting research that has been done and how introduced it. Personally, I didn't like the first part of it because it is quite negative because it talked about people who believe that stress is bad for them. And the study did a pretty extensive number of people, and there was 30,000, I remember. And 30,000 adults were asked how much stress they experienced over the past years. And then they was asked if the stress was harmful to their health, if they believe it. And the result is that 43% those who experience stress was more likely to die in the next 8 years. That is pretty pretty scary number, in my opinion, that they did an 8 years long uh, experience, and people were actually more likely to die due to simply believe that stress was bad for them, even though all of us experience some form of stress in our life. But the research doesn't stop there. It's also show that for those who did not believe that stress is harmful, okay, so there's the other end of the spectrum. Those who did not believe that stress was harmful, they they was less likely to die, and even less likely to die than the people who experienced little stress. So this is to me, this is about mind over body. So if we refuse to believe, or if we just simply don't believe, we don't think stress is bad, then we are healthier. And those who believe that stress is bad for them and is the harm, it can come very, very quickly. So what do you think about this? What is your perspective or opinion on stress, and how can we utilize the information that was provided? Well, Ling, welcome. And I also see Victoria as well. Welcome back. I saw you last week, but I think you came in a little bit early a couple of times and you wasn't able to join us. And Casey, I see you unmute yourself. Feel free to share your thought on this, please.
All right, Ben. Well, and hello, everyone. Gosh, stress. So I'm going to guess that I'm the oldest person on this call. And that's okay. I can say that I've lived both sides of it. I know that stress has been a great motivator in my life. And I tried to think more often than not that even if I didn't embody it, I really knew that stress was motivating me towards success. So I think that maybe I tricked myself. But looking back at it, at all the stress I put myself through, I'm truly amazed that I'm still alive. I have a serial small business, solopreneur, real estate and restaurants, that sort of thing. And boy, oh boy. I'll just say this. I spent a lot of my life, gosh, I don't know who this quote is attributed to, but I've had many worries in my life, most of which never happened. Something to that effect. And I was this guy who thought, well, if you're not playing chess with the game of life and you're not strategizing, so you're figuring out every possible move, then you're not engaged in the game. And that's how that was my modus operandi for what I thought was a successful business strategy. Well, I can look back now and say, well, I never failed at anything in my life. I also never got the brass ring, so to speak. And I would say that if I could do it all over again, I would be where I've arrived at now, which is I don't live in fear of the future. I'm not future fear focused. Something I came up with today. Like I said, I used to be future fear focused. And now I'm kind of craving creativity. And so I love alliteration. So whenever I can find words that, alliterate together, it works for me to remember them. It's a mnemonic device. So point being is I'm also able to look back and say at the hardships I went through that I would say, okay, why did that happen to me? That was the old mindset. And the new mindset is, why did that happen for me? What lesson did I learn? Boy, and I can reframe it now and say, boy, I proved that I was resilient at that time and I survived that stressful period of life. And I'll tell you, there's I don't know if this is the forum for it, but I'll just say, what's the word for it? When you say I'm just going to give a trigger warning to people that I'm going to make a statement that involves death. And if anybody wants to tune out for just a second. But after leaving a potential partnership with a restaurant business partner, my mentor, we put our house up on a loan, get an SBA loan to do a restaurant in a B-C+ location in San Diego. And we had a great time spending 5 to 6 months getting the restaurant ready, coming up with the best menu of any restaurant I've ever been at. And the last thing I heard from my chef was, hey, good night, I love you. Well, Daryl wasn't the type of guy to say, I love you. We had a love-hate relationship, worked together 6 years. He went home and decided to end his life that night. And it was an extremely stressful situation. I can say, look back at it now and say, it's one of the things I'm most proud of in my life. We got the whole staff together, and I explained to them why I'd come to the conclusion to open that night and to not close, whether it be in the honor of Daryl or not. But I really thought that to honor him, because I knew he and I weren't having problems, his life was causing him problems. But the decision to open probably may have saved our restaurant. I don't know that. But the Restaurateurs of San Diego came to our aid and offered me help in the kitchen. And it was a beautiful thing. And 2 years later, we were written up in the New York Times and survived it all. And it was probably one of the top 3 most stressful periods of my life. But I can look back at it now and say, you know, when the going got tough, that was when I was the toughest in my life. It was like I grew up and became a man that day. And I don't know if this is too much information, but I can say that the stress that I went through at that time motivated me to save that restaurant, save everybody's jobs. And we went on to a successful run, sold it to one of our employees 4 years later. And she owned it with her husband for 4 years. And the restaurant had a 13-year life. But and I would say 95, 99% of the restaurants would not have survived that beginning. Most would not have. And I know that from my experience. But so that's what I'll say about stress.
That's it. Oh, thanks for sharing, Casey, and thanks for being vulnerable in our discussion like this. And each week I feel closer to everyone, because we have the opportunity to share this platform with each other and learn more about each other, which is something that I didn't have when I was taking the MA. We got to do a small breakout, but not an hour-long talk like this. I was only able to connect to a couple of my HAP team member. And I have background in restaurant too. It's a lot of fun, but at the same time, there was a lot of stress because there was just a lot of work. So I had to work like 7 days a week, and I've been involved in many grand opening, and then of course there's a lot of grand closing too because we uh we closing down. Of course we do it kind of like quietly, but there's a lot of work, so that's what I meant by grand closing. And this can be stressful, but it is a lot of fun. And it is not related, but I have friends who go down the path of suicidal thought as well, and that's definitely it's very surprising to everyone. But I hope that I'm glad that you were able to handle the situation, and I'm glad that everyone make it out on the other side okay. And in a way, I think stress is very good for us because it's allow us to recognize that we need to be strong. We need to work our way through that challenge, and there is definitely will be a better a better day, light at the end of the tunnel. And often, from at least from my experience, when you make it through difficult time in your life, you are stronger, and everything is simply better. And I'm glad that you share your I would even call it a success story because you make it to the other side. Okay. So now,
Well, if I may add, then I'll just say one other thing about that. Is it reminds me of our conversation. I don't know, was it just last Saturday when we talked about post-traumatic growth? That was the epitome in my life of post-traumatic growth. My pinnacle experience of it. Anyway, like you said, that which doesn't kill you makes you
will
stronger.
make you stronger. Well, one story that I tell my friends all the time, where anytime that I had an opportunity to, is the story of Donald Trump back in the early 90s when he was already a billionaire, but due to the crash in real estate, he the famous story is that he was $900 million in debt, and many of his friends were in similar situation. Many of them even committed suicide. Even his wife tried to get money from him when he was at the lowest. But instead of giving up on his business venture, he see it as an opportunity to come back, an opportunity to get out of that hardship. Because when well, I believe he said that the real estate market will recover, and instead of seeing it as a disaster at that time, he turned it around and see it as an opportunity. And the story goes, within a year, he signed a really big contract in Atlantic City in one of the casino. And within 3 years, he make like $3 billion off of that contract. So he make a turnaround, and to me, that is one of the most powerful story, because the value was in billion, right? We probably don't even know like how much money that is. But for me, I just imagine that everything I own disappear, and then I own to the bank that amount of money. So I wouldn't know how I can recover from that. But the story, like in the case of Donald Trump, really demonstrate the importance of not giving up, seeing things as opportunity to grow rather than letting it have negative effect on us. And speaking of stress, I don't know if everyone else has similar experience, but for me personally, I thought 2011, like the New Year's of 2012, I thought that was the end of the world. And I really believe it. And it was pretty stressful at first, but instead of fighting it, I kind of like accepting it. And I know it's strange, like sitting here talking about it now, but back in 2006, I somehow got to learn about the Mayan calendar, and I thought that was fascinating. And I studied that in depth, and I learned all of the calculation. I don't remember it now, how to do it, but back then it was a pretty big deal. And from 2006 to 2011, I was able to calculate all of the date and time of big event that will going to happen. So there's a movie called the day after tomorrow. It's back in 2011, 2012. If you watch it, you probably know what I was talking about. So what happened is that I did the calculation, and at each of the event moving up to 2012, everything kind of happened as I predicted it, and it was really scary. Like the Large Hadron Collider, when it's first opened, the day was exact. That's my calculation. I forgot like what time it was, but I just knew that when it was announced that the Large Hadron Collider is going to run on that day, it was the exact calculation that I did. And what else? Spring Break 2011. That was when I really believe it, because Spring Break 2011, I still remember it's as clear as it was yesterday. So my friend and I went to Atlantic City for spring break. It was really fun. And we got into the hotel. I believe we woke up in the morning, and we were just watching TV, and there was breaking news. And we saw that there was a huge earthquake in Japan. And due to the earthquake, there was a crazy big tsunami. and I thought I was watching a movie. It was so scary. I couldn't even imagine like the size of the tsunami. And I thought that was literally like how we I thought that we was very, very close to the end of the world because it was that exact date that I calculated, and I knew that Japan had like nuclear power, and a lot of scenario play in my head, and I thought that was the beginning of the end. So I guess when it's come to real stress and real fear, that has to be the greatest fear in the beginning that I have. And what really scared me is that my calculation was off by 1 year, right? March 11, 2011. It was supposed to be March 11, 2012, but it happened a year earlier. And then I think to myself that maybe, the whole like BC and AC. I'm not sure how true this is, but I think like from one BC, it's go to one AC. There's no zero. There's no years of zero. So everything actually fall exactly as the calculation that I did. So according to all of that, it should have been the end of the world. So I don't know if there is like some unknown hero that saved the world or what happened. But for me personally, that was so scary standing in the hotel room from Caesar Palace and watching all of that. So I thought it is an interesting story to share as we talk about stress. I see Jillian raising her hand, so I'm gonna invite her to share. Feel free to unmute yourself, Jillian.
Thank you, Ben. I just wondering, is it possible to ask you to predict the stock market? For you have such a great, precise prediction. Yeah, it just come up. Sorry, it's probably not a good joke though. Sorry for that. But, yeah, I see that the talent of your like precise prediction, if we can use that in a certain way, it could be a very good supportive things to our life. Is that the ability that we have? As you are mentioned, the earthquake. Yes, I'm going to talk about the earthquake because there are several big earthquakes lately in this week, and that is when you are talking about that. How do you know I'm going to talk about earthquake? And it's very stressful, and it also gives me the not ability, but the opportunity to see what am I afraid of at the same time, because there's I really fear of it. So most of the like a bigger earthquake, I have to go out, rush out of the house, not be able to stay inside. And yeah, so at the same time, also take a deep look on what am I afraid of, why I'm so afraid of it. So later on, I've noticed I'm not afraid of I'm being buried under the building or and then going dead. I'm more afraid of I was being buried but not dead for a long time, or like being struggling if I have to like one of my leg was broken and have to cut it off, things like that. And it's not the cutting off. It's not the part I'm afraid. It's mostly when I was struggling in the health condition, in bed condition. Yeah. So as you mentioned, these and how this stressful stuff can be our reflection, and take a look at myself. What did I really afraid of, and can I do anything for that? That is something I can maybe having an action for the things that I'm afraid.
Hmm.
Yeah. So when Casey mentioned that, and when you're sharing, it just reminds me of this. Thank you for both of your sharings.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. And for those who do not know, Julie has the fear of earthquake, and we talked about this a couple of discussion back. And Julie, I really believe this. Okay, and this is really not very scientific discussion, but my belief is that we we have this memory of the past, and cases like yours, from my perspective, okay, I think it is very rare. And instead of looking at it as a bad thing, you should look at it as a good thing, as a blessing, because throughout history, as I have learned and I have done research on, we have been through many cycle of apocalypse, things like earthquake, things like volcano eruption, even meteor crashing down, and there are evidence in this earth that happened many times. So I don't know how we have that memory, because I don't want to go to like I don't want to do to express too much spiritual stuff, but I think you are one of the case where those are actually one of the memory that you have. How do you have that? I can't explain it, but I do know that there are, let's say we have many life, or let's say somehow DNA got passed down to you, but the the fear that you have, um, it actually happened many time over. And personally, I believe that we can access the information somehow. We just don't have a way to explain it. So instead of afraid of it, I think you should embrace not the fear. You should embrace the connection to the knowing, right? Because not everybody can have that detail of fear of earthquake. But if you if you can somehow utilize that energy to seek for, I guess, information or knowledge that you wish for, then that can be a really powerful. So I don't know if I'm just mumbling, but that is my honest feedback and perspective on this. I see Jasmine raise her hand, so Jasmine, please.
Hello, Chilling, Ben, Casey, Victoria, and everybody. So talk about stress, uh, and especially talk about earthquake and dying. When I was young, it's really interesting. When I was young, I don't know exactly how old I was. Then I believe that I was 10 or under. But I have this fear of death. Is it strange for a baby to have this fear of death? Um, and like I was reading like animation like Doraemon, the cat robot, and then watching movie and they talk about that. Suddenly I have this fear of death when I was young. And I asked my mom, whether or not we have multiple lifetime, and she was like, "No, we don't. We have only one lifetime, so you better be a good girl." And so I was, like stop asking her question, and I was like, "That sucks. We have only one lifetime to live." That's kind of like not exactly what I'm looking for, but I listened to her. And then when I was like when I got older, like now I, start figured out my life and then figured out thing like in what people in the religion talk about that, and people who like the scientists talk about that, and like different perspective about that. Up to one point that I somehow like unlocked that, you know, for myself, that that is not really the dying state. It's kind of like an ending here, but it's beginning somewhere else. So when I did enough research, suddenly I don't feel stressed about dying anymore. You know, in the past, sometime I had a dream about like my dad die, and then sometimes I have a dream about dying, something like that, and I was afraid. But when I did enough research, I somehow released from that the idea of being die, and there's only like one life to live. And then the same thing with childbirth. When I was young, somehow we learn about childbirth in school through poem and literature. People talk about being like painful situation, painful um like not situation, but like when we were in labor labor, it would be painful, it would be hard, and but then nobody talk about um like something. They just say that, oh yeah, when you have labor, it's painful, period. There's no other explanation. And so I got scared, and even I had a dream about giving birth, and I was like, oh, in my dream, giving birth is amazing, but like, in the reality, it's not, because everyone talk about painful and going through the labor, and I see people going through the labor that was in pain, they were crying, and such and such. So I was so scared of giving birth that I stopped myself from get into a serious relationship. And in fact, I had seriously relationship before, but the idea of giving birth and having family would hold me from um, scale myself to a happy family. Therefore, all of my relationship uh, was ended when it was flourished. And but then deep down in me, I always feel like I want to have kid and I want to have a happy family. But I always thought myself when I could go further. Until I try to release myself from that idea, that my scarcity zone, and I go into like learning about self awareness and such with my friend, and then with Ben. And I released myself from that idea, from having family, because now I have a partner who also study with me. And when like the moment that we decide to get married and have a family, the baby come. And of course, when the baby came, it was painful, but it rewarded. And nobody talk about that, like the feeling of feeling rewarded and like big achievement when it's a mixture of feeling between like in pain and um in pain and reward, something like that. And so when I have baby, and people talk about like epidural shot, it's bad for you and stuff like that, you should have a natural labor. But the moment that I have that shot, I feel so released and at ease, and the baby came out super fast. I was like, well, if I have this delivery this smooth, then I could have as much a baby that I could. It's like, why should I wait this long to have kids? When I could have kids when I was in my early 20s. I don't have to wait like all the way now to have kids. So so that is kind of like what I mean is like, when people have stress, is because they hear, they consume other people idea, and they don't go deeper in research. The more we do a research, the more we learn, the more we go deeper, then we will experience that whatever we scare, we will be able to experience for ourselves, and we would be able to be the judge who tell ourselves whether or not it's painful or it's scare or whatever is happened. We should not consume from other people point of view. And that's for me. Like if I don't go enough, then I will feel stressed. But if I pass that level, then I will be able to make a decision by myself and for myself, and I will no longer have stress. And that's it. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Jasmine. And my theory about fear and stress is that it's kind of like the high risk, high reward, instead of letting it stopping you, instead of let it become a limiting belief, we can just simply overcome it, and then we will be rewarded for our efforts. And I think that is one of the law of the universe. So I think the key lesson here is uh, instead of letting stress and fear devour you, we should see it as a signal that a big lesson is coming, and it's best that we simply learn that question. We will come out a better person instead of seeing it as a misfortune. See it as an opportunity to learn, opportunity to grow. And from my personal experience, that has been the case. So whenever I face a challenge, I will like bring it on. I know the big reward will be right after that. And relating back to what Jillian shared earlier about her fear, I just want to say something real quick. The reason that I value your fear, Jillian, is because your fear is very unique. It is about earthquake. So my interpretation is that your fear is not just about yourself. Your fear, you fear for other as well, because something like an earthquake, something like a natural disaster happen, or even like an apocalypse, somewhere deep down, that it will affect other people too, and not just yourself. So it is a very, very unique experience. And I think that proves that you are a loving person, a very kind person. And instead of looking at it at the bad thing, I think you should channeling the positive energy for the good, in loving and kindness. I can tell, I can hear in your voice that you are just a very lovely person who care a lot about other and want to make the world a better place. So embrace it instead of fear it. And so in 11.1, we also get to learn about the part where Aaliyah Crum, the one that conducted the hotel cleaners research with Ellen Langer. She also did a research on office worker and showed them that stress is enhancing. Stress is good for you. So it's very similar to the hotel research of how she tell people the information that they did not know before. So even though they are continuing to work in the similar environment and doing similar work, by being aware that stress is good for them, they reframe the way they perceive stress, and their performance improves significantly. So that is to prove that stress, on the other end of the spectrum, stress can be very good for you. And so it's all about perspective. Me personally, I do believe that stress is very good. Whenever it's come, I welcome it because I see it as an opportunity. I didn't have this belief when I was in school because back then I've learned from a mentor uh like a way to change my perspective to focus on positivity only. And I thought that was good. I've been holding on to that practice for a very long time until later 2 years ago when I learned happiness study and emotional well-being and the importance of acceptance, accept the negative emotions so that we can let it out, and not having it impact our physical well-being. So it is okay to have stress. That is how we grow. And when I was in college, I was having like this debate. It was more like an argument with one of my best friends. So this girl, she was a huge believer on negativity. She said that she can only accomplish things when she is under stress. So when she was worried about stuff like doing final paper the night before it due, and we used to have like a big debate on the importance of. Well, I was arguing for the importance of being positive, and she was arguing for how negativity is so good for her, or has been good for her. And in 11.1, we kind of got to learn the importance of both side of the coin. And I think stress is good. We simply have the idea of stress is good, and that will help us grow. And it doesn't stop there. I think accepting that stress is good is only half of the equation. The other half is that we have to allow ourselves time to rest. Just like lifting heavy weight, we stress it, out, but we have to give it time to recover and growth. So when we are under stress or when we experiencing burnout, it is also sometimes a good signal to just take a step back, rest a little bit. You have done the work. Now you have earned your break, and by resting, we can actually grow more. And in 11.1, Tao brought up another very, very interesting story of a marathon runner. I don't remember the exact name, but he wasn't the best long distance runner, and the setting was in the 1960s. So he was not the best. He was a professional athlete, but he was not the best at all. But in one or even like two of the event, he had an injury, so he couldn't practice. He couldn't exercise like usual. He couldn't run as much. So instead, he was forced to rest. And thanks to that incident, he was able to rest more than usual, and he ended up have like a really, really good record, something that he has never done before, and it was even faster than the the world record at that time. So instead of pushing yourself to work really, really hard, it is important to take rest in between. So I really, really love that story. Yes, Casey.
And also, Ben, I do not remember his name either, but I remember the story. And here's the one little twist on it I remember. I believe that he was known as one of the hardest training athletes, and that his training regimen was, it was just unbelievable to everybody. But it, in their minds, including his, it took him beyond his physiological capabilities. and his difficult training regimen made him better than he was. But the irony was he didn't set a world record until he was injured and had to train less, something like that. So yeah, there's just a slight twist on how you were sharing it, but it was a very you're right. It's a very fascinating and compelling story because it's just like me. I went through college, and I would tell you that I did more all nights, overnighters prior to test than I didn't, because I was we'll say I was an incubator. I wasn't a procrastinator, but I also played baseball, and we played 60 games in the last 2 months, and I went to an Ivy League school. I mean, I was competing against it was a difficult academic setting, and we just played so much at that time of year, April and May, and all the way into finals. And it was very difficult to keep up, but I would end up spending all-nighters, and I did okay. But in actuality, I probably would have done better if I got 7-8 hours of sleep. So we know that now.
Yep. And speaking of sleep, that's gonna be 11.2. So we are at it. And thank you so much for giving me more information on the athlete, because of course, there are always more information that I wasn't aware of. But it make a lot of sense that he had trained really, really hard in the past, and he didn't have the a chance to recover and grow. So when he did have that growth, he was stronger, better than before, even probably beyond his imagination, and it only makes sense that he break the world record. So it's fascinating. I didn't know that he was training that hard. I thought he was just taking a break from his training, regular training. um well, speaking of sleep, I think I really hope that we can discuss in detail this. We got about 35 minutes. This is very, very interesting, but long story short, sleep is very important for your health, right? You gotta have that 6 to 8 hours of sleep. Where when we have a sleep problem, when we don't sleep enough, everything else went down, right? Your health went down. You crave for food more. There are many cases that people are overweight because they simply didn't get enough sleep, and their body crave for energy, so they ended up eating high fat, high sugar junk food, and that's not good. And pretty much you need sleep. Sleep is important. That is the short version of 11.2. Well, the thing that I find 11.2 most fascinating, that power nap or beauty sleep is very important. And it was reported that people who take power nap, even as short as 15 minutes, is give them an energy boost. Their minds are clearer, and they simply perform better. And I see this in real life watching my father. He was the master at power nap. He could sleep anywhere, and he was quite successful at his career. So power nap is the real thing, and I'm so glad that in our culture, I was born and raised in Vietnam. We have not just lunch break, but like a really, really long break where people go home, have lunch with their family, take a nap before they go and back to work at like 1 or 2 p.m. in the morning, and then come back at night to have dinner with the family. I don't really see that here in the US, at least from my working experience. Sometimes I even work like 12 hours a day. There are people who work like 16 hours a day. So that lunch break or that nap is out of the window. And I'm so glad that there are research show the importance of a power nap, and maybe people are more productive if we can just give them that 30-minute to an hour break where they can eat real quick and take a quick nap. So super, super important to have a good night's sleep. And the topic, or the question rather, that I want to ask everyone in here is about a technique that I have learned but did not exercise back in 2006. And I share it with my professor, and he was just laughing at me because the technique that I have learned is called sleep diet. So it is about sleeping less. And I think my psychology professor thought it was a joke, or he my English wasn't very good, so maybe he was confused of sleeping less I can lose weight. So he said that there was better way to diet than cut back your sleep. But the premises of this, right? The idea is that I was in a forum with a private community. It was very popular back then. We don't know each other face. We don't know each other real name, but there was like ID that I can see, and um, they are very smart. And there was a conversation started, and one of the guys said that, you know how like each of us only had 24 hours a day, and he said that most people sleep 8 hours a day, so we only have 16 hours a day, really, not 24 hours. So imagine, he said that, imagine if you can sleep less, but you still have more energy to experience life. You were like, how awesome that will be to have that extra 5 hours of experience in life. And then he was asking everyone. He was introducing the idea, and I don't know if he did this or if there was an experience run. So let me know if you know more information about this. But I thought the idea was very interesting. So instead of sleeping 8 hours a night, what he recommended or what he introduced was breaking down the 24-hour to 6. So every 4 hour, he would work for about 3 hours to 3 hours and a half, and then he would sleep for 30 minutes. And then he wake up, he do the same thing again, work or whatever for 3 hours, eating or whatever for 30 minutes, and he would dedicate that 30 minutes to sleep. So each day he sleep 6 times, and it's only taking 3 hours. And he reporting that people who did that had more energy and had more time of the day. And I know that in 11.2, Tao said that I think he mentioned quickly that 4 or 5 hours sleeping a night is a myth. It's not real. But what I'm saying is a little bit different, right? It is like power nap. And you know how like when we go to bed and we wake up, we don't know if it's 3 hours, 15 minutes, or 6 hours. We just know that we close our eye and we open and certain time has passed. So the argument that he was making is that that people will have more energy and feel better because instead of sleeping 1 time a day, you sleep 6 times a day in deep sleep. And he argued that that was better for the body. So I don't know how true that is, but I always thought that it is a fascinating idea. So what do you think about that? I actually have never asked this question with anyone in happiness starting, but for some reason I feel like this may be a good time to discuss this. Yes, Casey.
Well, Ben, as usual, I have a experience and thought. I have the me search on this. So I spent most of my adult life probably sleeping between 4.5 and 6 hours. I'd probably get 7 to 7.5 hours a week, but I was go, go, go. And I didn't even drink coffee in the morning. I was just ready to go. I just woke up, drove my wife and children crazy because it was like I woke up on sugar. But I was just excited to go and do work and make things happen. But also throughout that period of my life, I drank too much alcohol. I ate too much processed sugars. I just had a bad diet, and exercise just became a thing of the past. So I don't think it was because of the sleep. I think it was because of my other life choices that my health started to suffer. I've always been a lucid dreamer, but there's new evidence, and I do a nightly program, but it's about the most active wavelengths that your subconscious functions on. So there's alpha, beta, theta, delta, and somebody named Joe Dispenza, if you're familiar with Joe Dispenza's work out of Seattle, world renowned, but he's a guy who healed himself from spinal injury following a cycling accident. And they told him he would never walk again. They told him he would certainly never race again. And I don't know what the time frame was, but within six months, he was walking again. And he healed himself. And so he has gone on this whole life healing, mind over matter state of self-improvement and expansion of consciousness and healing yourself and manifesting. He's a fascinating guy. Many years ago, this was brought up to Tal. And what Tal said at the time, and it's time to revisit it, because there's been a lot more science now added to what Joe was doing. What Joe was calling science, certainly a trend 10 years ago, is now backed with scientific evidence. And in fact, he's partnering with a very strong advocate for HeartMath. And I remember Tal saying the same thing about HeartMath. But I am a big believer. I'm not scientifically prepared to have the debate to say what works and what doesn't. But what I will tell you is at night, I practice this Neville Goddard. Neville Goddard was a transcendentalist teacher, philosopher from the 50s, 60s, 70s. And things like, if you've ever heard the term start with the end in mind, I believe was initiated through Neville Goddard's work. But he talks about priming your subconscious. And Joe Dispenza jumps on this and says 80% of what happens in your brain activity and what makes you go and think, and as Tal would say, we're informed by our thoughts, happens in the subconscious. So he talks about training your subconscious, which, to get to the point, requires getting into theta wavelength sleep, which I think he says takes more time than just the short 3 hours. But I can tell you, the other night I experienced it, and I said, oh my God, I got up in an hour and I was already in a deep lucid dream. And it didn't take me 3 to 4 or 5, 6 hours. I was there. And my lucid dreaming is very, very real. I often know I'm in a dream. I can often control what's happening in my dream. I dream in color. I could go off on this for a long, long time. But it's all I'm saying right now is I think it's fascinating, the power of our subconscious mind. And I believe there's also been darkness deprivation, where people went in for long periods of time, weeks, if not even months, and ended up sleeping in 3-4 hour cycles. And so I think this is one of those areas where there's no definitive yet, even though a lot of people are telling you right now, if you looked on any health influencers, they're telling you 7 to 8 hours, 7 to 8 hours. You got to have it. You got to have it. I don't necessarily believe that. I think everybody is different. I think you can convince yourself Because God, in war, people go 3 days without sleep, and function at high levels, because they're in fight or flight, of course, and that's not sustainable over time. I've probably spoken enough in circles, but I think it's fascinating. Chiolin is asking me something on the chat. What? Neville Goddard. I'll type it in, Sheila. And Ben, I'm turning back the mic over to you. I just think it's
Okay.
fascinating.
I think it's fascinating too, and I scared of talking about it, but I share the exact same belief because it doesn't make sense that we sleep 8 hours a night. Like, what kind of animals sleep like overnight? I can't really think one in nature that sleep a really long time unless they go to like a winter hibernate or something, right? Because just imagine back in the time where when we were hunter and gatherer, isn't like danger everywhere, right? Like how do people sleep like 8 hours a night and then eat 3 times a day? That just don't make any sense, according to nature. And the reason that I am asking the question now regarding sleep is because just like you, I I had a research experience and it was by accident, right? I recently had a newborn baby Bella Luna, and people was warning me about the 2 hour sleep cycle of how like newborn they wake up very often. And I like looking back when she was born back in October, I was sleeping way less, but I had the highest level of energy ever. I was just it was my mind was so clear, even though I sleep less, but I feel better than ever. And it was strange. Even my MA classmate uh, asked me about it, right? Because they know that I don't sleep that much, and I was very energetic. I joined every Zoom. I even joined with the hack group Zoom, and I was more energetic compared to before. So if we can just take the hours out of a night's sleep, and if we were to compare 6 good sleep compared to 1 per day, it make a lot of sense that the 6 hour is better than than one good sleep, right? Because if you really believe in it and you really sleep really deep, like you said, Casey. So I think there's more research need to be done on this, and they should be more open minded when it's come to topic like this. So. And I know you unmute yourself, Casey. So I don't know if you wanted to say something or.
Well, actually, I mean, now that we're into the woo woo and the spiritual realm, which I love, and I joke with some of my friends who knew me as a pretty just straight up business dude for so many years. And now, it's like I go to drum circles and I'm a trained yoga instructor and things like that. And people and I play the djembe. It's like people that knew me for a long time think I've lost my mind. And yet I've never felt more spiritually aligned in my life. Well, this whole topic of manifestation, and since Chiolin asked, the subpriming your consciousness is what you do is, instead of dwelling on what went wrong today and what do I need to do better tomorrow, it's like you look at it as, what did I learn from today? And it's kind of gratitude and intention. And then you go to sleep thinking about whether it's challenges that you need to overcome, opportunities that you need solutions for. And I'm amazed at how this works. And it's just so powerful. I'll literally wake up in the morning and go, aha, like I have the answer to this. And I know where it came from. It came from my subconscious. And it's part of me, it's part of the universe we're in. but it's not something you have access to in your waking hours all the time, although that too could be channeled. But so now getting to manifestation. So now I'm getting closer to launching my 2 platforms, which I hope to do before Mexico City retreat. I hope to have them so that for a couple of reasons, many reasons, but to share with my friends there and whatnot. But I also, so I decided, I said, well, I need to manifest some podcast opportunities and invitations. And I'll tell you, I wrote that down. Oh my gosh, less than a month ago. And I had up to that point 1 invitation. I now have 5 invitations, 4 of which are through HSA, different continents, and 1 is outside from the woo-woo circles, and it's amazing. And I literally will tell you, I saw, what was it? Was it just? I think it was just yesterday morning. I woke up and I read before, after my meditation, before my yoga, I read that this woman, Laura, is interviewing one of my friends from Argentina from HSA, Gaston. And I thought, I said, oh, here's another podcast from another brilliant HSA alum. I don't know whether she's MA or not. And I said, I told myself, I said, I'm going to have a good interview with her. I didn't say, how do I get an invitation from her? It's what Neville Goddard calls starting with the wish fulfilled. And it's the law of assumption. So if you heard of the law of attraction, this is the law of assumption. And it's like, if you're going to write a book, you come up with your topic. And if you have someone who can do the graphic mock-up for you, Wayne Dyer used to do this. He would mock up the cover of his book and put it around another book and sit it on his shelf while he was writing that book, as if it were already done. And so anyway, the point is, by the time I got done with my yoga, and you can't make this stuff up. So 45 minutes later, I literally hear my phone go ding a couple times. I look at it, and one of the dings was this woman, Laura, whom I've never met. She lives in Norway, and she asked me if she could interview me on her new podcast. Wow. I mean, I don't know. You can't make this stuff up. I figure, what are the odds? 1 in 3,000 now. But it happened. That's all.
Yeah, I believe that, when you send out a signal, the universe will conspire to make it a reality. Unfortunately, most people lean toward negativity, and somehow they manifest that. I see Jillian raise her hand, so I just want to go to her real quick, and then we will circle back to you, Casey. I think you'll be a great guest for any podcast. I think you are super fun, great energy, and have a lot of knowledge to share, great experience to share. So we appreciate you. All right, Jillian, feel free to unmute yourself.
Yeah, when Casey's sharing, it also reminds me because I do have some sleeping difficulties previously, and it's during the days that I have a lot of worries, and then it become the influence at the sleeping at night. It was like sleeping shorter and shorter, and and then it become fatigue and tiredness a lot. And it also reminds me, and then that's the time I start like to looking for the science study about how to have a better sleeping and things like I'm also practicing mindfulness. So I do notice that when there's a period of time when I like continuously and doing mindfulness for like very frequent, it do helps a lot at night for the sleeping quality. It doesn't mean that like if I sleeping longer, but it's like in the same time the quality is better. So I didn't feel that much tired. After if I do some certain amount of meditation, there was more obviously to see this change. And the other part is that what you have just mentioned about that very short period of time for sleeping at like in the mid of the day and it's really tired. And I also uh, felt and noticed that if in that moment I can have like 5 minutes, just go and sleep. And even it's 5 minutes and it's great. I love the expression that you mentioned about something about boost, right? Sleeping boot or something. I love the way you described it. So I'll ask how you say that. Yeah, Ben. Yeah. And the other one is the other part is that before I will calculate how the length of my sleeping and then start worrying in the next day because it's like I didn't sleep good enough for 8 hours. It's only 6, and the next day the worries become another burden for the next day rest. So when I released that from reading some of the sleeping advices, says everyone has different lengths of sleeping needs, and that become like a relief, and it's something like changing. And now I also noticed that there's one thing about like when I'm about to sleep, it's the core temperature. If can we can lower the core temperature to 1 to 2 degrees, that will be better help for going into sleeping status. So that is how I will just tune down the air condition, something like that. So these are the things that when you are sharing and just remind me of these. Thank you for all of your sharing. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Julian. And I think when it's come to sleep, it is very much similar to what we have learned in 11.1 about stress, right? We can believe that stress is bad for us and is materializing. It was reported that people are more likely to die in 8 years. But on the other hand, if you don't believe in any negativity that stress can bring, if you can, in fact, if you can see it as positivity, then you will manifest it. So from my personal experience and my belief, I think sleep is very similar. If you get good quality sleep and you get a lot of sleep during the day, then you are healthier. You have more energy. But if you believe that you don't get enough sleep or sleep too much even, then that belief, mind over matter, mind over body, it will manifest, and that is what you experience. So I think it is more important to work on your subconscious, right? Priming your subconscious, like Casey shared, and I think that would be good for you. And by the way, I was born and raised in Vietnam, so when I first came over to the U.S., I found pajama fascinating because I grew up not like really really poor, but it wasn't common to have pajama because some people they don't even have extra clothes, right? They only have like two pair of clothing, at least like when I was growing up. And even though I found it fascinating, I thought it make a lot of sense to change to your pajamas so that you can sleep better. You probably don't want to wear your big jacket going to bed, right? It's not going to feel good. It's not going to feel comfortable. So similarly, right? If we take it to the mind over matter and how important it is to meditate and clear your mind as you go into bed. So the metaphor that I would like to use is just like uncomfortable clothes, right? Go into bed, it is best to clear your mind and you will sleep better. A lot of people they bring stress with them as they go into bed and they have a hard time sleeping, or even when they sleep, it's feel heavy. And when they woke up, they just don't feel good. Well, just imagine like a heavy drinking night. I don't know if you guys still party like that. I don't do it anymore. But back in when I was in my 20s, I used to drink a lot, and man, when I woke up, I feel so dehydrated, a lot of headaches, and that was not a good night's sleep. So I think it is important to clear our mind, get to that relaxed state before going to bed, and just picture that comfortable pajama and just ready for a good night's sleep. I think when you in that state of mind, it's no longer matter how long you sleep. And I think people should worry less about getting that 6 to 8 hours of sleep, quality over quantity. And we know when we have a good night rest and instead of trying to sleep 6 to 8 hours a night, try sleeping 6 hours, 6 to 8 hours a day, right? What I mean is sleep more and have a quality sleep. We have about 8 minutes, and I want to ask Casey this real quick before we run out of time, because I do want to limit our discussion within 90 minutes so that we can plan for this discussion. We discussed a lot about dream, and I want to ask Casey, have you ever had dream where it feel a lot longer than the time that you are sleeping in? For me, I had this one particular dream that I often share with my close friend that it felt like a lifetime, right? It's only 64 hours of sleep, but the level of detail that I experienced in that dream, it literally as long as a lifetime, where I grew up being very powerful politician, go through different experience. I don't want to go too much into the detail, but it felt like years, decades in that short hour. I didn't know how it worked, and I always asked if other people have anyone else ever experienced something similar in that sense. I know it's pretty crazy to even like talk about it.
And you would like me to respond?
Yes, because I feel like
Okay.
you probably have similar experience.
I've had 3 recurring dreams in my life. So I am now back to journaling. I have a lucid dreams journal, and I try to wake up first thing in the morning. And it's amazing sometimes how long it feels. I would say the majority of my experience feel like they happen over several hours to several days. That's a majority. That's my average. I can tell you that when we owned our mountaintop outside of Portland, Oregon, where we were trying to develop the wellness retreat, I had this recurring dream that we were on the right path, and I had this vision of people coming at the beginning of a weekend with these heavy burdens and leaving with a lighter load and happier, and they had a great experience. But it went on for years, and till eventually I had this, again, a recurring dream. I had this dream probably a dozen times until our world kind of crashed around us and that dream changed. But I will say this, I saw that, I'll go all the way into the woo, guys. We had this recurring ritual of a family fireside dinner with friends, and my kids and their kids were there, and neither of our children have children yet, and they were there, and we were singing and had music, and then my now ex-partner and I, we turned into crows and we flew with the drafts over the mountaintop, and we were like the stewards from another dimension, and our children took over the retreat. Now that dream didn't come to fruition, but it was an important part of how I'm on the mission that I'm on now, because I had to go through this 2-year process of trying to make the retreat happen, because it was really important for my spiritual and continued growth, my spiritual awakening and my continued growth and expansion of consciousness. So I'll leave that dream there. And then on another experience, I will tell you, I'm not going to elaborate on how I got into this meditative state, but I will say that in a several hour period, and particularly part of it, 45 hours or 45 minutes, I had the experience that I went through the eternity, all of the existence of mankind, and I experienced toxic masculinity at epidemic levels. And I ended up calling this dream the pains, the sins of our fathers and the pains of our mothers. And it was a very eye-opening, awakening experience, and it has informed me on my mission. There's a lot to talk about on this, but I'll say this: the answer is yes. I've had these experiences. I will share one more with you. I woke up exactly 3 months to the day after my partner committed suicide, our chef partner at our restaurant. And he didn't do it at the restaurant. He went home and did it. But and that was such a stressful period. And I realized I woke up one morning and I know that in less than 3 minutes, I had the experience that I spent the day in our restaurant with Daryl. And Daryl was the chef partner. And he visited me as this very serene being. And you would never describe Daryl as serene. He was just a little too wild. And so the point is that it allowed me to breathe and self-regulate again. And I woke up crying and realizing that I had been visited by Daryl, and that I knew that it happened in a nanosecond. My brain starts kicking in and saying how to analyze it from a okay, what did I just experience? And I let go and I said, Daryl visited me. And sure enough, about a month later, 2 women were out on our patio doing tarot cards. And long story short, they told me that our whole building was surrounded by this white energy, this white light. And they didn't know anything about Daryl or what had happened when we opened. But they later, as I shared with them, they said, well, he's here protecting you. And so, I don't know. That's kind of a off tangent story about dreaming long periods in short nanoseconds, but it happens.
Wow, powerful. And yeah, dream are very interesting, and I feel like we need. I don't know if there are a platform out there that people can share and learn more about this, but I always find dream fascinating. And I'm so glad I got to talk to you, Casey, because it seems like we share a lot of similar experience, like recurrent dream and vivid dream. And well, you're sharing about that 45 minute where you go to the entirety of history, and your quote on how what our father are a sinner and our mother had to go through all of that pain. I had that realization too. And growing up, I was like, I didn't like Christianity of how we are all sinners. I didn't do anything wrong, I never intended to do anything wrong. But my realization that we are definitely sinner. The stuff that we did in our past, and I don't know how I made that connection. It just make a lot of sense, and how we has been through many suffering. We have done terrible thing in our life, and if we can, and if we, well, I believe that we are forgiven, and there are bigger picture that we get to experience, and I'm grateful. So, yeah, and I see your message, Shirley. maybe I'll share that sometime in the future, but it's not gonna be yet. It's pretty interesting, but it's not about me, you know. We'll share this in the future when the time is right. But the experience that I have is pretty much explained in the movie Inception, of how there are different level of dream and how you experience different time. You did experience time differently, and when you go deeper into different layer of dream. That was the concept in the movie. Why most of people just watch the movie, somehow I experience it with one of my dream, and it was devastating what happened in that dream, and I can still feel it. So it's interesting. It's weird at the same time, and to be honest, I think that's what happened sometime in the distant past of humanity, and somehow I got to see. Pretty much, I see the apocalypse. Spoiler alert! I experienced the apocalypse in my dream, and I was the cause of it. It was not pleasant. So I can totally relate it to what you said about earthquake chilling, because I experienced the apocalypse in my dream, and it was the realest thing. It even feel real, more real or realer than real life itself. And from my study, apocalypse happen often, and somehow we still have the memory of it. And I think it's such a blessing for us to have happiness study and have our spiritual journey, and just simply live a meaningful life and enjoy everything, every wonderful thing that offer to us. So, but with that, thank you so much for joining us today. And as usual, I'm gonna play a song as we go out. So appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. And where is my song? Let's pick out this one.
Feel the energy within, it's rising.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Every step I take, I reach the sky. In the rhythm of my heartbeat, I come alive. My body moves with purpose, I thrive. Every morning light, I find my way, stretching out my soul, I greet the day. In every motion, I feel so free. This is the way it's meant to be. And as I move, I feel the flow. The strength inside begins to grow. With every breath, I'm letting go of every doubt I used to know. Body in motion, mind aligned. Feel the power, it's all mine. From the ground I rise, I soar. Stronger, better than before. In the dance of life, I found my grace. With every beat, I find my place. Through the highs and lows, I stay in tune. Underneath the sun, beneath the moon. And as I move, I feel the flow. The strength inside begins to grow. With every breath, I'm letting go of every doubt I used to know. Body in motion, mind aligned. Feel the power, it's all mine. From the ground I rise, I soar. Stronger, better than before. Body in motion, mind aligned. Feel the power, it's all mine. From the ground I rise, I soar. Stronger, better than before. And as I move, I feel the flow. The strength inside begins to grow. With every breath, I'm letting go of every doubt I used to know. Body in motion, mind aligned. Feel the power, it's all mine. From the racing high. My body moves with purpose, I thrive.